Welcome, listeners, to the Restricted Handling Daily Intel Briefs What's Coming Up Next Week in the World podcast. Let's get right into the calendar for June 14th through June 20th. The main event is the G7 Summit, running Monday through Wednesday in Évian-les-Bains, France. This is the week's biggest leader-level gathering, bringing together France, the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, Japan, Canada, and the EU institutions. Ukraine, the Middle East, and China-related economic tensions are all sitting on the table at once, so expect a lot of carefully negotiated language, a lot of side meetings, and probably a few diplomatic facial expressions doing more work than the official communiqué. The thing to watch is how unified the leaders can sound on Russia pressure, Iran-related de-escalation, and China trade issues. Also on Monday, EU foreign ministers meet in Luxembourg for the Foreign Affairs Council, chaired by Kaja Kallas. The agenda puts Russia's war against Ukraine, the Middle East, and EU-China relations into the same room, which makes this a very useful early signal for where Brussels wants to set the week's tone. Expect messages around sustained Ukraine support, Middle East spillover management, and a sharper but still carefully balanced line on China. Still on Monday, Kaja Kallas and Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelhadi co-chair the EU-Egypt Association Council, also in Luxembourg. Egypt is right at the intersection of Gaza, migration, the Eastern Mediterranean, and Red Sea security. This is not likely to be fireworks, but it matters because Egypt remains one of those countries where 5 different regional issues show up wearing the same trench coat. On Tuesday in Tokyo, the Bank of Japan reaches its monetary policy decision after its June meeting. Governor Kazuo Ueda and the Policy Board have already flagged this meeting as the point for an interim assessment of the Japanese government bond purchase reduction plan. The headline rate may not be the whole story. The market will be listening for clues on bond purchases, balance sheet normalization, and how Tokyo reads outside shocks. Also Tuesday, EU ministers for European affairs meet in Luxembourg for the General Affairs Council. This is the prep meeting before EU leaders gather later in the week. It is the kind of meeting where the public drama may be low, but the sentence-by-sentence shaping of leaders' conclusions can matter a lot, especially on Ukraine, defense, the Middle East, and the budget framework. On Wednesday in Washington, the Federal Open Market Committee decision and Chair Jerome Powell's press conference become a global macro event. The rate decision sets the backdrop for sanctions enforcement, European defense financing, and market tolerance for geopolitical shocks. Watch the statement, projections, and press conference more than the rate itself. Inflation, growth, and energy price noise will be the real action. Thursday brings the Bank of England's MPC decision in London. The UK remains a central military and diplomatic backer of Ukraine, so this is one of the week's main European macro markers. Expect close attention to the vote split and the language around inflation and energy risk. Thursday and Friday, EU heads of state and government meet in Brussels for the European Council. After the G7, this is the week's most important EU leaders forum. Ukraine, the Middle East, defense, and security are all in the frame. The key readout is whether leaders keep the conclusions strong and specific, or whether the final text gets sanded down into classic Brussels oatmeal. Also Thursday, the Bank of Japan releases minutes from its April 27 to 28 meeting. That is backward-looking, but markets will still parse it closely to compare the earlier internal tone with the message from the June decision. Running across the whole week, Baltops 2026 continues in the Baltic Sea region through Saturday. U.S. 6th Fleet, Allied Joint Force Command Brunsum, and forces from 15 NATO countries are involved. This is a live NATO maritime deterrence signal in a theater directly tied to Russia. Expect Allied visibility, interoperability drills, and Russian counter-signaling. Because Moscow does love a Baltic Sea stage when NATO is already paying for the lighting. A few unscheduled items deserve watch list status. Keep an eye on movement around the EU's proposed 21st sanctions package against Russia, especially in Brussels working channels and around the EU meetings. Watch the Crimea and Sevastopol sanctions renewal process, which comes due just after this window. Watch for follow-through after Xi Jinping's June 8-9 visit to Pyongyang, especially messaging on China-DPRK ties. And watch for more Russia-NATO signaling around ball tops, including maritime shadowing, information operations, or unsafe incident allegations. Thanks for listening. If this episode was useful, take a second to leave a review or drop a comment. It makes a real difference in getting this in front of the right audience. We also publish a daily intel brief on Substack at restrictedhandling.substack.com with deeper coverage on Russia, China, Iran, the Middle East, and the DPRK. Have a great rest of your day.
The grill is shot. The chairs are held together by optimism. And what happened to the rug? Sounds like your outdoor setup is not ready for patio season. Fix it all with Wayfair. Shop Wayfair for grills, rugs, furniture, and more. With 20 million 5-star reviews, room of choice delivery, and expert setup on qualifying orders, it's never been easier to do more for less. Get 10% off your first eligible purchase. Hurry to wayfair.com or download the app now.
Wayfair, every style, every home.